I think it's also, you've been a fixture, not so much recently, but at times a fixture on the pod, and so this is also a potentially inspiring success story about how people can not only become fixtures on the pod, and becoming a fixture on a pod is no doubt a way to boost your career prospects and get your personal brand out there, if not a way to get the guaranteed gold hex, but you can also become a guest on the pod. When you're a guest on the pod, that's a different level. It's basically all about you and max pressure. So, hey, everyone out there, if you're listening to this, you could go from fixture to guest. And if you're already a fixture, then we probably know who you are. You're probably in here right now because this is the very beginning. So, are there fixtures out there? We will see. Welcome to the Capsule 21 podcast. My name is Middlemarch. My co-hosts are Piv and Dovetail, and we are Capsule 21, an art collective dedicated to the celebration of timeless art through blockchain technology, through NFTs. This is the Capsule 21 podcast, taped in front of a live Twitter Spaces audience. You can join this podcast and become a fixture, and then maybe a host. No promises. We are doing a podcast every week through the end of 2023 in order to demonstrate that anyone can have a hit podcast just by being consistent and bringing the energy. Today, our guest is Critical Function, who is a professor of punk eschatology, which is the study of the end of the world, basically. And I actually sort of made that up, but he is a professor, a real professor. I was interested in that idea of the collision of the 24 by 24 pixel grid and reality, and what better way for those to collide than with the end of the world. We are here at Capsule 21 obsessed with avoiding the end of the world, at least as pertains to art. There was an issue with the Capsule 21 website recently where it wouldn't work for this guy, Benbit, who is an iconic meme in Capsule 21 collector lore. And he reported a small error that then took me like 2 days to fix because the website just would not work. On the internet, things do not work. It's very, very weird. It's a computer. You'd think you deploy a website and then you can fix a bug. It will work. It does not work. The promise of the blockchain in many ways is that you don't have to worry about this. It'll stick around, but nothing can survive the end of the world. But really, it's more about the film that you are an expert on, as I understand it. So, Critical Function, what's your story? Who are you? And what are your theories? And how did you come to be at this important juncture, so deep in the Capsule 21 scene and Web3 in general?
Thank you. In terms of what I do, it's definitely not punk eschatology. But that's what caught me off guard this morning. But I've been teaching sort of not predominantly in film, but in Japanese studies. But my main research is Japanese cinema, and I've been at the university for maybe almost 7 years, teaching in various sort of Asian studies and Japanese studies, but my main focus is the sort of contemporary society and cultural studies, media, pop culture aspects, and specifically Japan. So and just for the record, I'm submitting a PhD in like next month, so I'm not technically prof. I've been masters for a while, but teaching and working.
But you do have a master's. I've told everyone at least you have a master's. What is your master's in?
It's in the course was what is the title of the master? The Culture and Communication Studies from the University of Waseda in Tokyo, but it was in Japanese cinema as well, and with a sort of a Japanese cinema of the post-war period, so kind of a socio-political perspective, looking at satire and how there's a sort of commentary on that, contemporary moment of US occupation leading into the kind of high growth period of, sort of all the way up to the bubble, where there's this really strong economic situation going, and Japanese society dealing with that really sort of rapid modernization of the country, and how people sort of represented that through film, and looking at the kind of comedy satire ways of sort of poking fun at all these new modern things going on. So yeah, that's sort of my focus, and the PhD is an extension of that, really, with a little bit of an aspect of uh, sort of a nihilism in terms of not being able to deal with the sort of rapidity of that pace, and how people on the periphery of society, like the minorities and the working class or lower classes, get left behind, in that sort of race to rapid modernization. So
Interesting.
yeah,
Well, congrats in advance. Like, let me just say, you are definitely one of the last people who will ever get a PhD. I mean, to me, it's shocking that you're even going to do it. Like, it's so much work, it requires so much
yeah,
concentration. Like, am I wrong? Like, how are
yeah. It's taken me a while. There's COVID put me right off, and I lost all motivation. And yeah, I was almost ready to say, you know what, this doesn't even matter anymore. But things got better, and motivation came back. Being teaching and having a lot of young people around that are really excited about things can really bring that motivation back. Like people like, oh, you like Japanese anime, and you're like, oh yeah, and then you have these conversations with people that are 15 years younger than I am, and then really excited about things that I grew up with in the 90s. I'm like, yeah, you can study this. Like, we can talk about this all day. This is a serious topic. That's what we do. You look at some of these incredible animes and pull them apart, and they can teach you about the sort of social currents and things that are happening in Japan, if you're interested in history and contemporary history and things like that. And that made me think, God, I really need to just get back on track. So yeah, doing all that sort of thing um, really brought it back for me. So
Yes, the key is when you're old, I've found, to find the younger ones and leech their energy and turn into your own energy. Here at Capsule 21, Dovetail is the resident young person, and I've been sort of trying to steal his life force, but I think he's still full of it. Dove, are you still young?
Yeah, I'm still young. We're getting older every day, but I think I still count.
Although, actually, there is a famous episode of what I like to talk about, which is this Bob Dylan song. Piv knows what I'm saying. My Back Pages, which is a song that basically talks about how you actually are getting younger as time goes on because you are learning that you are more and more without knowledge about the situation. Your youthful conviction fades away. Dub isn't like that. Dub's wise for his age, but you do find often. I've found that you become less old, less confident as you see different sides of the story. So with that, getting into Japanese cinema, if and by the way, I am a total outsider to all of this. So just, but if I may, I would say that it is no controversial statement to assert that the beginning of Japanese post-war cinema is the movie Rashomon. Is that correct?
yeah, Kurosawa. Yeah.
Right. So this is a movie, and I've never actually seen it. I really should see it. I'm going to see it. But basically, it's about this question of differing perspectives, right? How in the modern, in
Yes.
modernity, and this is really true, right? There is no such thing as, it's really messed up, actually. There's no such thing as objectivity. This is something we talk about a lot here in terms of, science and, the quote unquote scientific, quote unquote method, and how many scientific, breakthroughs are not so much the discovery of new facts, but rather the reinterpretation of old facts. And when it comes to the blockchain, this is something that, well, anyway, so Rashomon modernity. What is Rashomon? How does Rashomon set the stage for the next 50 to 70 years of modern contemporary Japanese cinema?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure of anyone who are not familiar with Rashomon, but yeah, that was the film that sort of was a big departure point for Japanese cinema, being like winning the Golden Lion I think he took it to Venice, won that, and I think from there, eyes were on Japan and Kurosawa, and the idea. I'm trying to remember. The different perspective thing. There's a samurai's murdered, right? And then they have a trial, and all of the different protagonists or characters are giving completely different retellings of the story, right? And there's like a Shinto. The murdered person is sort of speaking through a medium, yeah, and then there's like a monk, and then the assault, the wife, and I don't know who else is in there, but yeah, they're all giving different versions of this story, and it sort of starts to question, like you said, this concept of how we have things, are really changing, and thinking about what you said, like objective truth or fact. But to be honest, I haven't seen this for a long time, actually, Rashomon, or Kurosawa, because I've been looking at things a little bit later than that. But isn't there a sort of thing called the Rashomon effect that came with that as well? I don't know if the unreliability, yeah, that's it. When they talk about when you go to court, or the witness, they're really unreliable, like eyewitnesses, and I don't know if anybody's ever experienced that or.
Yes. So that's not what this is, but what I was thinking you would say, because I'm looking at Wikipedia, is that like ever since the movie Rashomon, witnesses in trials started giving more contradictory testimonies because they felt free to do that. Like that, and that might be true too. I made up that effect, but I think the Pib declined to co-host. I think the actual effect is it's just the overall kind of unreliability. But I guess really taking that into the mainstream. I mean, let's just say this: it has a 98% on Rotten Tomatoes for a reason. Interesting to me, it didn't get the 100%. Very very interesting. So, Piv, you undoubtedly have a perspective on the movie Rashomon. Is that right? Piv?
Yeah, I was out, but I'm back in. I didn't hear the
So
question.
what does how does Rashomon set the stage for the next 70 years of contemporary cinema?
You asked that to me?
Yes, or just what you think of the movie Rashomon, or if you've seen it.
No, I haven't seen it. There's something else I just had to think about, but it's something completely different. But I will just ask it because it has to do with Ramkolas we've talked about.
Bigness guy, yes.
The bigness guy, yes. But I wasn't aware that Critical was really into Japanese studies. But Ramkolas did a really interesting book about the Japanese metabolist architecture. I don't know if you know anything about that, Critical.
Sorry, what was that? Metabolism.
Yes, metabolism. It's a post-war Japanese architectural movement, and they combined ideas of megastructures with organic shapes. And
who is the name of the architect? Is there a name? Because there is some name that I know, and I think it's what you're talking about. There's a famous guy, but I'm familiar with that.
The Hans Obrist.
Yes,
they started putting the gardens on the roof, and the like plants.
Indeed, yeah. Is that they want to build everywhere, like on the water and in the sky, and.
Right. Okay. I'm not that familiar with that, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
But in this book,
there wasn't. Sorry, go ahead.
No, in this book, Koolhaas and Hans-Ulrich Obrist, who is actually a curator, they went to talk with all these guys because a lot of them were still alive at that point, but they were 70, 80, 90. And it's a book full with interviews, in fact, with his metabolist architects.
Yeah, I'm just looking it up now. I'm just going to Google it because, yeah, so this one, if you straight on the Wikipedia page, that's the one I was almost thinking about. This there's a photo of this capsule tower, and I'm sure everyone's familiar with the phenomenon of the Japanese capsule hotel, which is a must. Well, it used to be a must do to like experience this weird stay overnight in one of these businessman type capsules. But the picture there is sort of the image I was thinking about when you did say that as well. But it's not the name I was thinking of, who'd put like the grass on the roofs and incorporated lots of organic elements, but maybe it is in here somewhere. But yeah, this is very architecture piv, a little bit outside my fields, but nevertheless, I'm going to.
So Rem Koolhaas did the capsule hotel. It started the capsule hotel craze, because I'm familiar with like that vibe. There's some of that in America too. The Line, excuse me, in the United States, the Line Hotel. So is that coming? I guess it does have a kind of Bauhaus thing to it. It's square, flat stuff, squares. So yeah, I guess that's kind of a pretty interesting concept to invent the capsule hotel.
I think they invented them there in Japan in the 60s. But Koolhaas just went to talk with them, but I think he was fascinated by the bigness again of their structures.
Be able to do it everywhere. I love this. So let's see if we can, people, they're the NFTs, and this is a NFT podcast. So can we bring it back a little bit? Okay. What people are maybe more interested in, just trying to pander a little bit. So, okay. There is the precursors to contemporary Japanese cinema, and then there's the Japanese cinema, contemporary cinema itself. And you mentioned anime, and you mentioned the intriguing process and exercise of really taking anime or some other sort of more popular elements of culture and cinema more seriously and looking at it seriously. And then I know there's just how can we get into this conversation? There's what are the touch points? There's the famous motorcycle stopping scene from an anime movie I can't recall, and there's also the Azuki collection on the NFT world, which is also anime. So taking those two as kind of raw materials, how can we use the more serious looking lens and look at anime and kind of learn some things, not just be entertained?
Well, the bike scene, that's Akira, right? That's what you're talking
Yes.
about. Yes. Classic. I know exactly what you're talking about. I just tweeted something because Piv sent me a message, and I didn't see it till I woke up this morning with this like idea, want to talk about cinema and eschatology and then somehow related to NFTs. I was going to do a bit of a bike ride this morning, but I was a bit tired, so I went for a walk. I've got this nice little bay here. I went for a walk around the bay, and I was staring at the water, and I remembered Tarkovsky, and maybe because Piff said he liked sort of Russian filmmakers, and Andrei Tarkovsky is one of the greatest filmmakers ever. So if you haven't seen a Tarkovsky film, you'll have to see Stalker, Solaris, Mirror, all of them, I guess. Andrei Rublev. But yeah, my favorite Stalker and probably Mirror. But I was thinking of because I've got his book at home, and I made a post about it because when I came home, I thought, when I was studying film studies, I was really into, and this is one for the young, continental philosophy study guys out there who are really into their Deleuze. You might be more familiar with Gilles Deleuze and Guattari and theories of sort of, Marxisms and things like that and capitalist critiques. But Deleuze's two books on cinema, Image 1, Image 2, Cinema 1, Cinema 2, are really amazing books. And his first book, Cinema One, is based on the action image. And the second book is all about the time image. And Tarkovsky sort of connects with this idea of capturing moments of time. And the way, I think we may have had this conversation before one time, but I just found this really fascinating because my love for film is not this kind of like sort of naive, oh yes, film is cool because it looks warm and fuzzy and it's nice and it's just old school, just like saying, oh, vinyl, my vinyl records are much better because they're real and tangible.
So you're talking about literal film here now. You're like literal, film, like the celluloid aspect, not just
yes,
as opposed
so we're
to
going
UHD
on a bit
TV.
of
Got it.
Yes, a bit of a deeper tangent, but why I'm going this way is because how this relates to NFT and how this can relate to blockchain. For me, I just thought, wow, Tarkovsky really wanted this idea of sculpting in time. Like, how does he leave a sort of permanence or an impression in time? And isn't that precisely what the blockchain is kind of offering? And I thought, wow, that's a really interesting thing to think about. And maybe Tarkovsky's mission of, forever wanting to etch something on film and have that permanence, like capturing it. And this can continue into an idea of eschatology, right? Like, the living or the dying of the image or and things that, Dove has sort of kind of experimented with as well. This is really interesting for me. So, like this idea of does blockchain and do NFTs leave a permanence in time and kind of have a superiority over like digital images, and will blockchain be the cool vinyl or the cool film, of digital images? It has to be on the blockchain or it's not legitimized, that kind of thing.
It's an interesting concept because film, right, as I think you're alluding to, ended up, at least with video, film is more durable, more timeless, more everything good than digital has proved to be. Like, obviously in the beginning, and you see this, not exactly this, but like all the messed up stuff they did with Star Wars and everything, but just like what, the digital special effects aren't as good, but then also the resolution, all this stuff is less good. And then on a more visceral, like eschatology standpoint, it just doesn't stick around in the same way. Like, I remember my parents took videos of me on VHS, which was sort of a quasi film, but then they were like, okay, this is dangerous to have on this VHS thing, so let's put it on a DVD. But now it's like, okay, well, DVD, what is it? You get a tiny scratch, if things ruined, and where it can even play that kind of thing. Whereas film, if you keep it well, and for data itself, like the physical is always the the most kind of if you want to have something really last a long time, you got to carve it into stone. Basically, that's number one way. And so the blockchain representing kind of the it has all the cracks and pops like vinyl or film, the artifacts that come from the fact that it's impossible to use, basically, but could it actually last? And so I guess is that kind of what do you think about, Dub? You've touched on this in your work.
I don't know if there's a good answer. It's hard to say because when you think about things like vinyl and film, they're like tangible objects, right? They are real. They exist, and I think that the blockchain doesn't exist. And this feels kind of like a boomer thing to say, but you can't hold it and touch it, so it doesn't have necessarily that old school cool. People aren't looking at things written in assembly and going, oh, wow, did you know Roller Coaster Tycoon 2 and 1 were written entirely 98% in assembly and the other 2% is Java?
Is that true?
Yeah, that is true. That I know that because I'm a turbo nerd. But, people at large are not thinking about this kind of thing.
I was more of a sim guy, like SimCity, Sim Tower. Like the Tycoon people always alienated me because I was like, why are you obsessed with money? Like, what about Sim? Now in these Sim things, there was money too. So, but I feel like there's a strict divide. Are you a Tycoon person or are you a Sim person?
I'm a Tycoon. I'm a Tycooner. Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, digital stuff doesn't last forever. That's the whole Moon Lake thing was about, and So yeah, I think that it has less role. I also think what people are doing in NFTs and on blockchain in general, actually, critical. I would like your take on this as someone who has like studied culture like extensively. I don't think that anything happening on the blockchain right now holds very much cultural
Oh
relevance
my God.
outside of like our small NFT nerd bubble. And I'm curious what other people think. Like, has anything happened in blockchain that you think is like world affecting, that like changed culture, etc.?
Yes, that's a really great question, and I might be on your side more than the other side in this as well. I'm kind of well, I have I think it's a justifiable skepticism, with it a little bit. I think in terms of cultural studies and not huge movements and changes, but the kind of like this Twitter thing and the community thing, which kind of sounds really NFT and a bit lame, like, oh, it's all about community, but I don't think that should be overlooked. I think because there's really substantial studies on subcultures and communities, and I think that what you know regardless whether or not it was blockchain or not, but that's a part of it. That's what brought people together, and basically and it sounds it's a really sort of it's I don't know. It's not the greatest of like origin stories, because it's like people came together to try and make a lot of money. It doesn't. It sounds a little bit like, well, that's not the greatest beginnings to talk sort of positively about. I think some of this new form, like speaking on Twitter, Twitter Spaces, meeting lots of different people on Twitter, and we can't say that's because of blockchain and NFT, but it certainly accelerated it. I mean, like how many people are on Twitter Spaces that are not really sort of in crypto and NFT? There are quite a few, I guess, but not to this level, like
Yeah, the pre-blockchain Capsule 21 was pretty dead. Like, it took the blockchain to really invigorate Capsule 21. And also, I would just say this. I agree with you, critical function. I would also just say this is like, I would ask yourself the question, Dove, are you so sure that film is real? Okay. Because, or any more real in the blockchain? Because yes, the blockchain, well, just think about it this way, because the blockchain has some unreality to it, but certainly the overall state of it is real in that there's some configuration of matter. It's not like the ghost or whatever that lends it. It's, the state is based in reality. But I think what you're saying is impossible to interpret. It's impossible to learn what that state is without being mediated by 10 million things, and that makes it not real, and you have a point. But with film, okay, you stumble upon a canister of film somewhere in 1,000 years. Is that real? Okay, if it's so real, then tell me what the movie's about. You're going to have a pretty tough time telling me what the movie's about unless you have some way of projecting it and doing all the memes that come with that. So it is the same as the blockchain in the sense that there is physicality to it, but it is physicality that's linked to a bunch of social conventions about how to access the thing. It's like a Rashomon thing. Like, it's how you look at it. You can't take the film and like, you can hold it up to the light, you can get something, but still you can't get the main meme without knowing how to interpret the crime scene. And the same thing, very much so, is true, much more so, really, realistically speaking, with the blockchain. So there's no way you're going to get out of this one, Dove. You have to, submit to the, fundamental need to, interpret these kinds of things. And so, yeah, I think all the more reason, I think, to look at most positively on the social, conventions and so forth that have been, created, and we're here, right now in this kind of thing. But yeah, there's no escape from the interpretation. I really don't. I think, and so that's why the nerds either way have a problem. The people obsessed with blockchains and the people obsessed with physical things. I guess the vinyl record you can use like a needle on. I read about that when I was younger. You could figure out a way to play that.
Well, okay. So let's look at the second part of the question. Then has anything been done in blockchain or NFTs that has had widespread cultural impact? What is the Rashomon of NFTs?
Dov, I think that the most cultural impact is that we believe that an image, that you can own a digital image. That's something new, and that's quite big, I think. And that's a cultural impact as well. that we all believe that this image, because it is pointed to you, that it belongs to you.
No, but the only people who think that are people who are buying NFTs, and most people,
Yes,
by a large
yes,
majority, are not buying it. They think NFTs are stupid.
Yeah, here's what I would
I
say.
agree.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I agree, but I think this is until now the biggest cultural impact, and it will not stay with us. That's an idea that will stay. I think that you can own a digital image.
Yeah, and people always had notions of, copyright is something that, imagine copyright, explaining copyright to someone. It's like, okay, it's an imaginary thing and you could have it. But yeah, to me, and we talked about this a little bit once, Doug, to me, the shocking idea is not so much that you can own a digital image, which is cool and shocking, but the fact that you can lose it. Like, that's the innovation, right? Like, try going to someone and saying, hey, guess what? There are all these CryptoPunks and they're, the iconic first PFP thing, and they're worth at least like 50 or 100 grand each, but there are like hundreds of them that are lost forever and no one can ever have or sell. That is innovation right there, because I think a normal person would say, wait a minute, they're gone, no one can have them, like there's no admin who can get them back. So to me, it's like the fact that you can own a digital image is interesting, but the fact that you can forever lose a digital image and no one can ever own it is the revolutionary idea.
Yeah, this is great. I think Dove is like the wording though. Like you guys are talking about innovation, and Dove is talking about impact. I think is a difference there. So, Piv's right. Like what is different? You can actually own a thing that possibly doesn't exist according to Dove, and we can say, if you want to get to on the material or tangible aspect of it. But I like what you're saying about, the same with film. I mean, to have a blockchain, you need tools, you need, hard drive, you need things, like these kind of to contain information. So there's some sort of physical connection. But the idea of has it made a cultural impact? We have to measure the brevity of impact. Like, what do you mean by brevity of impact? I think I know what you mean, and you're probably right. Like the people outside of this space are not interested. It started off poorly and it hasn't got a good reputation, and it'll just sit for a while. With, for me, it's looking like akin to shoe collecting and card collecting, and becoming a very niche type of field. There's a lot of talk of mass adoption, this and that, and I personally don't think that's ever going to happen, because have the masses adopted, being like really nerdy card collectors, like it's a thing, but it's not like everybody's out there wanting a PFP or wanting to collect something to resell it for more than they purchased it for. But the adoption is more to do with the practicalities of the technology, not with like an image or a digital art image. That's what I see. So when you like, if you were to approach this from a sort of cultural studies, sociology perspective, the majority of your content is going to be about the kind of the people and the things that are happening in communities and opposing forces and events and dramas and sort of things like that, rather than the thing itself, like more so. But those things came together because of the blockchain and the NFT. So you can't really separate them. But it's so, I mean, yeah, cultural impact. Like maybe the IP thing, maybe the fact that you could, like the whole writer thing with the can't copy the NFT thing, like it's definitely worthy of discussion, but it's not at a mainstream level of this is really changing the way people think about images impact level, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, okay, so I agree with this, but I think I'd say two things. So one is we are living in heck right now. It is nuclear winter and everything is bad. So if we're trying to look at cultural impact, like nothing is happening. Like everyone is everyone is miserable. This is a mega recession. And when I was your age, I'm not gonna dox Dove's age. I don't even know his age, but when I was a younger person, it was 2008. And 2008 was really bad for everyone. But when you're young, you don't care. I didn't notice it at all. I literally did not notice it. I didn't care at all. Now I notice it, and it's worse than I could have ever possibly imagined. So every day that's going on, Dub, is worse than anything you could ever, imagine. So hoping for anything good, seriously, hoping
No,
for
this doesn't
anything good to
affect
happen.
culture.
It does affect culture. Believe me, it affects culture. Everyone is sad all the time. Does that affect culture?
No,
I don't know.
I'm seeing
Massive
some of the
worldwide
best
depression.
art in my life. Some of the best art and music have been in the last year.
Yes, I think there is, when it comes to sort of, yeah, I mean, sure, but like, I don't know. I think when it comes to cultural change that is related to technology, I think people there's just no. So anyway, the other thing I would just say is it doesn't. That's one vacuum that it doesn't happen in, and yeah, I think it's oh my, actually, genius was born in a recession, but I think it's correct. In my view, it's not correct to say that it's like good for things to be bad, basically for culture or for anything, but. There's another way in which this doesn't exist in a vacuum, which is, the blockchain isn't just out there, the plucky blockchain. Hey, I'm the blockchain. Blockchain exists in an ecosystem that is extremely competitive, which is the cloud computing and total world domination ecosystem. And so to speak of the average consumer as if they're deciding between the blockchain and the not blockchain, that I think is not a good way to look at it. The people are obsessed with giving Google money and making Google powerful and dealing with all these big guys who control everything. So of course they don't want the blockchain to be good, and people are down to basically do whatever is convenient or easy, the moment, whatever. It's not like, I don't think people, if you ask people, hey, what do you think the cultural impact of giant corporations running every aspect of your life, has that been like good or not good? I don't think people are out there saying like, yes, more corporate dominance, but they are doing that practically speaking. So, to me, it's not about, is the blockchain culturally significant? It's more about like, pick one. Corporations control everything, or maybe they don't. And so, would the outcome in which one of those or the other one obtains be culturally significant? Like in my view, yes. Basically, it would be not good in my view for culture for these big guys to run the show 100%. Forever. And so, I think the digital image thing is of a piece with this, where, what is it like to actually have something that you own, cash in your wallet, your house, kind of, although it gets taxed or whatever. But, when it comes to the digital world, like anything is just taken from you at the pleasure of these bad boys, So what has been the result of giving all of our, stuff to the bad boys stuff? Has that been good?
Adversity breeds creativity, right? Like, I guess I'm not sure what the kind of crux of the question is, but I think art is getting better and getting newer all the time.
I think you are crazy. Okay, so then, I wonder how we could get the most possible creativity. Maybe by total disaster everywhere. I mean, come on, like yes, adversity breeds creativity on a localized level. When you were talking about constraints in a person or a community or something like this, when we were talking about global recession, where people can't have the things they want to have in their lives and their dreams are dashed, like
that's but no, global depression, things happening bad globally, affect you on a local level, right? So when the world is doing bad, people individually are doing bad also. And I'm not saying that doing bad is good. I hope all artists to be billionaires and have perfect health until they pass peacefully with their loved ones, of course. But these are the kinds of things that are, for better or for worse, sometimes good for creating meaningful art, because we share purpose and we share meaning within adversity, and we bond with each other through trauma and through adversity. So that's how you make art. It's like very relatable and very good. That's why most art is not, like, most popular famous art is not like very happy.
Yeah, I'm not saying I mean, look, I guess there is a historical argument, where I'm not so schooled on exactly how all the history stuff came about. But, I remember there was this thing called the Bauhaus, and I think the Nazis were bad for it. right? I don't think a lot of people were saying, let's bond and oh my God, we're coming up with good ideas because we're shared bonding together. It was more like, oh crap, like this is bad, And so I'm not trying to say that, that's the most extreme example, but it's not necessarily just the most extreme example. It is one that we think about because of the Bauhaus and the Pip stuff. But the surely, there has to be some, more sophisticated theory than, bad stuff is good or whatever. It's not. Maybe sometimes. And when I
No,
say
I
local
mean,
level,
I just gave you the reason, right? The reason is because you create like bonds, and you create things that are easy to relate to, because everyone has suffered, right? And when you suffer, you have to fight harder. So the more difficult that life is, the more meaningful the struggle to hold on to it is. And I think that comes out in art. You think about an artist like Francisco de Goya, and he was painting professionally for many, many, many years. His entire life, he was a master painter. Received lots of commissions from kings and queens, and he was very, very, very successful as a painter. However, now the only paintings of Goya that people know are the ones from after he had kind of a mental health break, and his life, went really, really south. They call these his black paintings, and those are the ones that like everyone knows Saturn devouring his son, right? The big crazy guy is like eating a person. And he painted lots of like prisoners and like mental hospitals and this kind of thing. But that's all anybody. No one really knows his early work is mostly forgotten.
yeah, I'm not saying that on a, again, local level, an idiosyncratic, personality driven, talent, mental health situation. Like, of course, that is too rich for me to really weigh in on. Yeah, I agree that, artists, the flames lick the artist and the artist tortured. And that sounds like poetry when the artist screams, this kind of thing. I agree with that. I'm just saying the Nazis were bad for Bauhaus and a lot of art, and global recession is bad for Goya. Goya would be better to be a depressed artist guy if society were not totally falling apart also around him. Of course there are exceptions to this, but I think that the you just, if it is if you're depressed and then you can't afford your rent or your studio, that is going to be different than if you're depressed and you can afford your studio. And maybe it's good not to afford your studio to some degree, but I think it's I am not happy that everything is bad now.
I think
I'm
Middlemarch.
sad.
So I'll just chime in. I'm thinking about the thing that but back to significance of blockchain or NFT, and definitely the significance is there, but then the impact, and perhaps this what you guys are talking about is reflective on the lack of impact that the blockchain and NFTs was supposed to have, because the outside forces, the recession, and are still impacting the dream of artists being able to, bypass middleman, have their own work on a blockchain and decentralization for all. All of these amazing utopian ideas are still kind of restricted due to the macroeconomic situation of the world as it is. So that impact that is kind of proclaimed is not happening, right? On the level that people really wanted it to happen, and unfortunately that's because we saw that I go back to the beginning of how would you research, how would you study or write or discuss blockchain NFTs? The origin story is from trading, right? So it's like it's kind of hard to go against that, and there are small communities that claim or are doing things just without that idea of trading, right? Like just genuinely making digital art that they want to have forever on a blockchain. That's really
Yeah,
cool.
maybe I'm just bitter because I really feel like if we had been doing this last year, I was not really here last year, but if all this stuff had happened last year, I feel like it would have been. It's the climate, it's the economy, it's not my fault.
Yeah. Well,
It's
just
not, for
like you
once.
said, you're older too. I mean, I'm the same, and I did not care about the world your eyes open up, and other things impact, your lifestyle and things that you have to think about. Whereas, others who are just on the screen going like, wow, everything sounds like it's turning to hell around me, and what can I do? This is affecting me. How do I represent my feelings and my ways of thinking about it, and who else is doing it? And networks expand and subcultures form, and there's a kind of community struggle that, just gets a little bit more interesting, and subversion becomes like a goal. Like, it's like look what they've done to the system. How do we subvert it more? What can I do in a subversive manner to really, fuck with the system, and show that I don't want to be a part of this system that's just ruined the world around me. And that's where the creativity like starts to really shine, I think, because people are like, like punks. You're kind of like, how do I do something that shows that I want to be against this machine? And then the creative juices start flowing, and you connect with others, and it becomes really vibrant. But there are others, like, maybe older, and ones that are investing in it, and trying to somewhat have a stake in it and control it, at a loss, because that's what they're trying to sell it, right? They're trying to get it out there, and the underlying forces are not helping. So it's a sort of, it's an endless struggle, isn't it? Like the artist struggle. But I think it's probably a good time for people to really find what they want to do in digital images, and this whole AI thing. Like, it's still interesting to me. Like, I'm not like a huge fan of people that are just very simply creating something and then saying, here's my finished piece of art that I've just put a prompt in. Like I've said before, like, I'm more interested in how people utilize that with real, like, not, I wouldn't say real, but other ways of creative process, or something a little bit more interesting than just like, a kind of fantasy image or something like that. It's not really, I feel like there's got to be someone or something doing something a lot more conceptual, and then wait to see. I haven't been really impressed as yet, but
you gotta check out my AI art.
I know, I've told you, I like some of
Yeah,
your
the best
AI
one
art.
sold. There's no reason to look. No, there is reason to look. There's a lot of
Come
great
on.
ones
Yeah,
Dub
yeah.
did. I'm just
Ben got a
mad that
good
I should
snipe.
have bid on that. I wanted to, but then I was like, I'll just wait. Time ticks away. I figured maybe the auction would start. But yeah, I mean, one egalitarian thing about recession stuff is that it really it evens the gap between people who have money and people who don't. Because if you have money, typically there's an advantage, which is you can deploy that capital and do something with it, invest in something, make something happen. Now everything's bad, so you're just going to sit there. And so if you don't have any money, you can also sit there, or you can even do other stuff. So you mentioned trading. Let's get back. How can we beat the recession? How can we make money? We've got some advantages here. We got anime. We got the bike scene. Akira, what is the deal from a film and professorial standpoint with Azuki? Azuki is the meme anime NFT thing. It has gone up a lot. It launched with a pioneering NFT contract called ERC 720A. There's been drama. They did Golden Skateboard. What is the smart take on Azuki? Critical Funked, John.
The smart take on Azuki is the target audience they went for. That's my take on that. They really hit the nail on the head with the demographic of target audience for an Azuki PFP. That's the only way I see it. I see a very hype beastie shoe collector culture of like-minded folk who are not necessarily interested in anime at all, but very like directed at a very Asian American scene of collectors in general that like collecting things, and that's sort of how I see it. And then they, to be of an Asian American background as well as the founders, and then they get a defensive as well about that, and they have I've seen a lot of them comment that this is the first thing that spoke to me because of the way it looked, which is interesting. So that's like connecting to something that they kind of identify with. So I think it's it was definitely something like that. I think they got the right people in this kind of market that do those sort of things. That's my first kind of superficial take. Yeah,
I agree. Tell me what you think about this. I think this, to me, this is the most fascinating thing about Azuki. Kind of similar. You're right that it really like taps that hype beast thing. I think that amazingly, they did a better job than Nike with like rounding up this kind of the hype beast culture and the collector culture and the sneaker culture ideology. I don't know how, but like Azuki nailed that better than Nike, and that's, Nike's been doing it for fucking 50 years. I don't know how they did it. Do you agree with that, or do you think that Clone
yeah,
X?
absolutely. I think everything they've done has been like incredible. Besides the whole, origin stories and funk sort of connections, but since then, like the way I came into NFTs when they just launched, or maybe a month or so before they launched, and I was like, wow, what is this? Because I have this is this an anime thing? They look like they might be animes. Oh, I'm already I'm not on a list. There's no way I'm getting one of these. I've only been around for a month or so, and I don't have any desire to spend thousands of dollars to buy. When they did mint them, they were like these floating beans, right? Like a gif of a bean floating. And I remember looking at them going, God, I feel this FOMO. Like, this is interesting because this looks like it's going to be something cool. And what's going on? But they were really expensive, and I thought, "There's no way I'm going to spend my money on that thing." But it went on for weeks. Like they were like unrevealed for a long time. The whole process of doing all of those things, kind of like, I don't know if they were one of the first, but at creating that tension and hype and mystery around what it is, who it is, how is it going to happen, and then it just sort of launched at a really kind of still a good time for NFTs. Like, it hadn't, the Ukrainian
Yeah,
war
it was
was a
hype.
big crash, right? So that was just before all of that. It was still good, and then even when they did the like, I remember NFT LA, and I remember seeing like people talking about it, like they had some party and then they were all airdropped, and the way they went about doing all of these things was really incredible. Like, they really created the hype. They gave all of their followers like thousands of dollars for nothing, and I mean, it didn't even matter what the NFT looked like, and people were joking it was like a box that had dirt inside it. It didn't mean anything, but they had a cool party, and that they not everyone was just left for dead, like, from what they were doing in
But in
terms of
terms of the art, though, in terms of the art, because I understand, yeah, it probably does not matter because the actual thing that happened is the thing you're describing, and people even know what the art was when they got it in the box of dirt and everything. But like, looking at the art critically, right? Like, when you look at something from an outside perspective, you always have this risk, which I have, is like, I don't know much about this area anime, so like something that I think is cool to an insider who knows this genre better might say, it's interesting. You think that's cool. It's actually like janky anime flavored gruel rather than like good, anime. And so likewise, there's, the traits and the lore and whatever. Like, is this, was this made, the art, and which doesn't matter probably, but was that stuff made and by someone and reflect like a sort of sophistication and a sort of like real kind of relationship with the genre, with the area, or is it sort of anime flavored gruel?
Yeah, it's anime flavored gruel. Like, it's
No.
graphic design. Like, it's
No, no,
graphic
no, no. But be real.
design.
It's the best looking anime PFP. It's so much better than Shonen Jump.
Oh,
Okay, I'll
yeah.
be real. Azuki is the best looking PFP you could possibly have.
That's it's art is subjective, and there are reasons why I particularly love Shonen Junk and this PFP that I have right now. So thanks for the diss. But as Azuki, like, so for example, if you're actually interested in anime, then you would be attracted to something like Shonen Junk if you knew what all the things speak
So
to.
sorry, just what is that, Sean? I actually have never heard of that. Can you just quickly say
Oh,
what that is?
it's the founders of Crunchyroll, who are like, the lords of streaming platforms, came up with this PFP project to basically fund anime creators and artists to launch their own projects and try to decentralize the gatekeeping of anime production. And the next one, they already have one in production, Chronicles of the Inhabited Worlds, which is the artist who did these as well. There are a lot of reasons why there's a simplicity too behind the art, and it's because it's designed to be animated. You know, like when you have a lot of details and things in these so-called anime PFPs, that's just because they're a stationary PFP. Like they're illustrators, you know, they're illustrated, anime-inspired illustrations. And Shonen Junk is just anime. Like it's very basic.
Wow. Let me just stop
simple
here for a second, because that is a real sharp analysis there. Damn, I love this. I'm going to start using this. So true anime is a still from a cartoon type thing, and that means it should not have a lot of details. You should look how that would actually look, versus someone who looked at that and then drew a picture over here, anime inspired illustration. So just from that comment alone, I'm looking, by the way, on my screen right now at these two collections side by side. Just from that comment alone, this is totally giving me a tremendous gestalt shift on how I look at Azuki versus the Shonen Junk. That's a great insight. Just everyone listening to this, you just learned something very important about culture.
Yeah, it's just, you know, like the things with Azuki and the Valhallas and whatever else there is out there. I don't know, there's so many, and there's really amazing anime illustrated type works that they're just illustrations for that purpose, right? And I think the guy Eddie, who's the artist for Shonen Junk, he's an animator, so he's sort of like working to make it as though it's going to be animated, or he's just in animation all his life. That's what he likes. The thing with the Shonen Junk thing is that I'm from the 90s, and you know, Evangelion and all these sort of animes that I grew up with and absolutely loved. There are all these little traits are in that collection. The founders are the same, you know, similar age as me, and they grew up with all this stuff as well. So I mean, that was the first attraction. I don't really care. Everybody thinks they look really basic and crap, and that's fine because it just doesn't really bother me really. With the Azuki thing, so I just go on Azuki now. They're really cool, but just graphic design. Like I said, like they're kind of for that look. They have modern anime techniques such as like these kind of digital shading and stuff like that. But the Shonen Junk is like a comic book, you know, like a manga sort of comic book. The new collection is a lot different. I think they learned their lesson from hearing everybody say that looks very basic and junky, and so the artist is aware of that, and I think he's making the PFPs a lot more. Well, I don't think I know because I've seen them. I've probably seen a few that others haven't, because I'm just like, you know, I'm pretty active in that community, and I'm there a lot. And they take a lot of feedback. Everybody contributes to voting on styles and clothes if you're in the creative village that they've created in the Discord. So I mean, it's really cool. They're doing cool. They're just taking a long time, and the founders don't really connect with Twitter, which upsets a lot of people because everybody thinks that if you want to be in NFTs, you have to be like Frank from D Gods and be on Twitter all day, you know, garnering support. That's what the people think about NFTs. So those guys, you know, they're older, they sit in the background and just do the job. But some of these anime projects, as I said, are just very designy, illustration type things. Azuki is definitely, yeah, like Dove says, the hype beast of the NFT and of the blockchain world. They have partnerships with, if you go to that specific website called Hype Beast and look at brands that support them, Azuki has partnered with a bunch of brands that are on that list. I remember I did a bit of a research. I was like, okay, because people were talking about Shonen Junk going, why is Azuki an anime thing and they're doing so well and Shonen Junk are not? And I was explaining to them, like I've just said, well, let's have a look at Azuki. Like, who's the market? You know, do they even like anime? Maybe they grew up liking it, but this is not. People are not buying an Azuki because they're anime fans. Like that's what I'm saying.
So let me ask this question. So you have Azuki. Okay, first of all, you have Shonen Junk. They face straight ahead, looking at the camera, basically. Azuki faces left, interestingly. And then you have Valhalla, which is kind of in the middle, actually. They kind of blended these two flavors of gruel together. I guess one's not gruel. And they face kind of 3/4 to the left and center. Is there any significance in these three different approaches, or does this not matter?
I have to say, this is something that I learned when I was in school. They taught web design. This is like a class that we had. It was like a computer class, but a lot of it was like how to do Photoshop, like how to make a website in Dreamweave or like whatever. One of the first things that I remember being taught is that on a web page, all the images should face to the right because it more brings your eye to the center of the page, which is where the content of the page is. And now with Funks and with Azuki, they face left and so all of the characters are facing away from the page content, and it creates like a bad flow.
Definitely feels unsettling.
Yeah, I don't like
that's a really
this.
good discussion, Dove. They're having that right now in the Shonen Junk.
Oh, are they really?
A little bit, yeah, because
That's
of
fascinating.
the direction of the new collection from the artist is it's weird because it's sort of left facing, but it's an over the shoulder look again, but it's a direct address, like the eyes look straight ahead at the same time. And one person has come up and said, I really think we should have these things flipped and looking the other way. And then someone flipped them, and it started a whole conversation. And I was like, oh, here we go. Okay.
Yeah. To
Yeah.
me, love. Okay, shout out to the funk.
But that's like a
Facing left is right. Okay, go ahead, Dave. Sorry.
no. I just want that's like a cultural thing, because of course the punks look to the right, the correct way, but then there was this protest to flip them and do it wrong. But no, this is taken over by other things. So they like introduced the left-facing thing.
But is right-facing cultural? I mean, that's an interesting thing. Like the thing Dove is saying, so, I think, is that it's right-facing is the normal one, basically, and everything else you're trying to make a statement. And is that? I mean, I guess you have Hebrew and other such languages that are right to
Japanese,
left.
Right? Like,
Japanese is right to left. Wow,
yeah,
I'm so dumb. Edit this out
and
of the
top
podcast.
down. Like I'm like, okay, but I mean, let's think about how were traditional, paintings of rulers painted. They're sort of looking a little bit to the right, aren't they? Like this is that so, Dove? Is that what you learned through your art classes? Is that
Japanese rulers?
No, they're very head on, right? Or sitting down, like on sort of tatami mats, often cross-legged, samurai or emperors usually. And then they adopt the Western style. And now I'm thinking, yeah, I guess when you see images of Japanese samurais sort of, a little bit more later on, they have that bust sort of tilted to the right. Do they? I don't know. I should look this up before I say anything.
I'm not totally sure either. I only know it from like a design perspective. In terms of like web design and stuff. But yeah, that'd be interesting to think about. Well, I think actually there has been studies on it, because people remark that the Mona Lisa faces left and how she is unique because most portraits do not face left. So there's definitely like been studies into it. But personally, I'm on team facing right is the correct way. It's like most aesthetically pleasing. That's my only issue with Azuki. This is good.
So isn't it weird though that he famously did the funks and the Azuki, and people didn't know that? But then did they ever suspect? I don't know the lore, but they never suspect it, because it is hilarious. If you look at it, like, wow, they really face left.
I don't think people were talking about it except for like Paulie and some other funk OG members who kind of like knew, like a long time before, like had suspicions. But I don't think people ever made made the connection, besides maybe Funk's making jokes being like, haha, like facing left is right or whatever. But yeah, it is interesting that he made both and they both face left. I wonder if that's like his personal preference, or maybe he made Funk's and he was like, wow, people really like the facing left thing. I'm going to make Azuki's face left, since that seems to be like a popular form of like protest and setting yourself apart from apes and punks.
I think he did it while he was still, like undoxed and in the background as one of those sort of, like a clue, like it would have been fun, right? Come on, like to be like, this new thing, I'm doing it this way. I wonder if they'll get it, like a trolley type thing. Oh, come on, that's like a serial killer leaving some evidence behind the scene. Like, come on, it must have been
so obvious now, but at the time.
Yeah.
And so they have the beans too, right? Are the beans gruel?
The most gruel.
So they really just cranked them out. Well, I mean, the good news for gruel haters is that they only did 70,000 ETH in volume. So if you hate gruel, you will like.
Yeah.
No, you also
No, Azuki is cool. It's funny, before it came out with the whole funks thing, I was showing someone NFTs, right? Because we're still in an age where you can say that. You don't say I'm showing someone film, I'm showing someone vinyl. But I was showing
No, you
someone
say you're
NFTs.
onboarding someone. You're onboarding someone.
Yeah, but I was telling them how bad they
I
were.
know. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
And
I know.
you know, I told them, I was like, two or three. The only three NFT projects that I'm interested in that I would actually want if I had the money. I was like, pretend you had 100 ETH. Here's what I would buy. I would buy a CryptoPunk, and I would buy Azuki. And those are the only things that I'm interested in buying.
Not
out
the
of all
mutant.
these
Not the
NFTs.
mutant in this
Not the
hypothetical.
mutants, not the apes, not the Clonex, not the cool cats. You know,
Clonex
nothing.
is another one. Anyway, go on.
But those are the two that I thought were really good. And because the hypebeast thing is good, and now like more so. I mean, now I don't think buying NFTs is smart. You know, period. If it's a PFP, but you know, okay, I digress. Azuki has done well. They had a, you know, Critical was talking about the collabs. They did something with a company called Ambush, and that people in NFTs don't really have much sauce. You know, Web3 is kind of a sauceless, dripless community. Ambush is huge. Ambush is like a big company. People love Ambush in the streetwear community. They're kind of like your favorite designer's label. You know what I mean? Like your label's favorite label type people, even though they're pretty new. And I thought that that was big. And I think people that didn't appreciate or like talk about enough in the space how big that was. You know, like these collabs are becoming a bigger thing. I think that NFTs are more like sneakers than anything. So those kinds of collabs are super, super important.
Yeah, that's 100% right. The first time I looked into one of their collabs, and it, funnily enough, in terms of the brand, they had a video advertising a necklace thing or a piece of jewelry that the NFT was wearing, but then you could actually get the real thing. And I looked into that brand, and it really was like a kind of nothing thing from some startup in Tokyo. But what made it interesting was that the person who was doing or working with them was, you know, had like thousands, hundreds of thousands of followers, a Korean woman from South Korea with somebody else. And that brand was listed on the Hypebeast webpage. But when I looked at their Instagram, you know, they didn't have that many followers. And I was like, well, it's really not cool. Like, it's not cool. It's like just a necklace, like whatever. It's not great, you know, not like Ambush. But I was like, why is that so cool? Like, why does it get so many likes? And it's because, well, the people who are endorsing it are big, you know, influential people, you know, influencers per se in that industry. And so they have the right connections, and they get those connections, like I said before, because of the way they look and the people who are, you know, purchasing them and investing in them. And then the founders, they all have connections with that, you know, that sort of Asian American and then South Korean and then the Japanese sort of backgrounds. And they're like, this is our brand. This is our Web3 brand. And we're going to make it that way. And that's how it works. So
I think
for it's like smart, you know.
Yeah, the Western audience of like middle-aged, you know, day traders like aren't. This is not the target audience. I think that they're going for someone who's a little cooler, a little like more tapped into culture. So yeah,
absolutely. You know, and they someone doxed Dingerlings too, right? Like who purchased that ridiculous skateboard, gold skateboard. And he's like, it's funnily enough, he's from pretty much like where I am actually now in Sydney, Australia. I couldn't believe that. And I kind of, I saw, because I looked, I read it all. I was like, wow, they're doxing this guy who's like the biggest whale in NFTs. And yeah, he's Chinese Australian, you know, from a good school and one of those guys, a sneakerhead, you know, like collector. And this is the person. I was like, there you go. That's they're after the young money that will spend it on things that don't even exist. Like a JPEG.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that's like that's it. We're done. So
it's for the nouveau riche.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And so that's, I mean, you know, when Dove says he would get an Azuki, I mean, that's probably not a bad thing. I mean, you know, if you unless you have like some crazy staunch ethics where you're still, saying like, well, it's Vagabond and this and that, and
Yeah,
that's
no,
fine.
I don't
I
care.
get that too. Like,
Everyone who is in NFTs is like a scammer. So you either don't buy
yes,
NFTs at all, or you buy the one that you like. But I think my dovetail advice to all of you: stop buying NFTs because you don't need them and they are worthless.
Oh, I just bought a bunch of NFTs over the weekend, to be honest, of a new thing, and then after I did, I had that regret feeling of like, why did you do that? You could have just not done that. But I don't know, I liked it, and I thought it's kind of the first time it's something that it's a '90s sort of skate thing. I was like, these things remind me of a nostalgia, so that's kind of cool.
No, I
So,
get that too.
yeah.
I am like the biggest fodder of NFTs. I always talk about how you should buy, whatever. But I still literally I still do look at OpenSea almost every day, and I look at the stats page and I go like, oh, look, what's trending? Is anything cool? Is there anything good? I'm like, oh, I have some ETH in my wallet. Like, what am I buying? Like, what should I buy?
You fake crudder, you love it. I can't even look at OpenSea every day anymore. I mean, I used to a bit, but I'm actually I was really busy actually the last few months, and I sort of said, you know what, just look when you need to and don't worry too much about what's going on. But
yeah,
just look
at
at Twitter, the healthier option. I think it's better to buy 1,000 NFTs a day than to ever look at Twitter. That would be my.
I'll just tell you guys though
argument.
too. I have a 9-year-old who's just learning, like you said, these tycoon games. You mentioned it earlier. Like he's showing me how he's making all of this money on Roblox, theme park tycoon, and I'm like, wow, this is interesting. And he's showing me. I just bought it. He's getting a laptop for Christmas. I bought him a gamer laptop. It's a big purchase for the 9-year-old. So I hope he appreciates it. He's going to get into JavaScript. But, all these Shonen Junk NFTs I bought, we stake them now. And I showed him that's called questing. And he gets really excited. He's like, oh, how many points do you have? And it's like, well, cool. This is something I can do with him. I'll just throw all my money away on JPEGs to say that they're all for my child. And he can get excited about the points he's earning. And one day I'll just be like, here they all are, son. Now you can have all that clout as some sort of JPEG way of like, I don't really care. That's the plan. So I think it makes it fun for a dad, I guess, if you're still a child at heart like me who likes, kind of art stuff and designing, like, the anime stuff and graphic design. I've always been interested in that. I did lots of arty things. In high school I was into photography heavily, hence I went to film, I guess. But I like looking at images too. So but now I can just give them to him and pretend that I didn't waste all those thousands of dollars on the images.
I think one of the main things that you have to think about, and there is kind of like an old school cool thing because there's a cultural touchstones that will be cool again in the future. But if you think about something like Azuki or Valhalla that lean really hard into current things that are trendy and cool, it's like, okay, in 5 years when people think that anime is lame again and people have a new style of streetwear that they like, and everyone's PFP looks out of date, the fashion isn't cool anymore, then what do you do with that? I think when I say don't buy NFTs, I think I'm bullish on NFTs in general. Long term, I think NFTs are a thing that will be around because, like you said, children really easily understand digital economies and they like pictures just like we do. I think they're just more native to it. But the danger is, I don't think that any of us here are going to correctly guess, or if there even will be one at all, a collection that is still cool in 5 or 10 years. I think that's really, you can't predict culture like that.
Well, any pre-AI art NFT is going to be historical. So that's something I saw on Twitter from someone. Are you everything now, everything changing? This has been a great pod. Before we wind down, I want to give a chance. CryptoFerd said something to me privately. I'm doxing CryptoFerd officially if he wants to say that insightful comment to the group. Otherwise, no pressure. But if anyone wants pressure, if anyone loves pressure, you're in the right place because now you have to talk and ask a question of critical function or express your view. What actually happened in Rashomon. If you've seen Rashomon, you are ahead of basically all of the panelists. So you can tell us what you think. All right, CryptoFerd, what do you got? No pressure, big pressure.
So you guys were talking about the left-facing versus right-facing things. And it's just like I was thinking about it, and I'm like, historically, in traditional art, people are always, not always, but most of the time, they're facing left. The Mona Lisa is facing left. It's kind of strange that the big NFTs, or maybe it's not strange, maybe it's a sign of it being digital art, are, right facing. The apes, the punks, things like that. I found it interesting. I found that clip on NPR there, and I sent it over to Middlemarch. So
what are some other classical paintings besides the Mona Lisa?
Oh boy,
some other iconic ones.
I think like presidential portraits. I think those are all left facing.
Okay, yeah, I'm imagining the Washington. Also, isn't there one of the English kings or something looking prominent left facing? That's very interesting. So
the girl with the pearl earring.
Yes.
I think is left facing.
Wait, really?
Yeah, it's pretty sure she's left facing.
Yeah.
Holy.
Well, she's
moly.
like looking over her shoulder.
But that's over the shoulder view, but still.
So
I'm not so sure if that's
guys,
really.
I think it's about one of the things that came up in the Discord conversation was about, because it faces the text, like it's on Twitter, it's like looking at the comments, it's engaging with what's going on, and so I wonder, did the punks evolve from that? Like, basically the way we type, like if whatever forum you're on, Reddit's, or that your tag is in the top left corner. If you had an image, it would be then looking at what you type or text. And so the comments were like, it looks like the PFP is looking at the words and engaging it. And I was like, look, you're overthinking things here, guys. Like,
No, I think that's real.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about in web design, Minowatch, you were just telling me about this F-shaped web design, right? And you do it, like, this is what I was saying earlier, like in design, you want your images to face the content, not because it looks like the guy is engaging with the text or like reading it or anything like that, but just because from the viewer perspective, it looks like you are engaged, like your eye goes from left
I was going to say,
right.
your eyes go there. Yeah, that's what it's
right.
Like, where do your eyes go? Yeah, of course. Okay. I think
yeah, but still, I think went back in the day of more kind of, less contemporary design, more like, corny design. I feel like for a comment or like a tweet, you would even have like a little caret, like a little indentation in the body of the content that pointed at the avatar. So like, I feel like there was a web design trend that would make it really like almost like a speech bubble, basically, and it could come even from the mouth. So I think that trend is, that's no longer the case, really. Like when we look at Twitter, like if you look at Twitter, it's pretty just minimalistic, putting the thing next to it. But I feel like that was around for for a period of time as well. So I think there's something powerful to that. I guess when the punks came around, what were the big social platforms? I guess Twitter was really the number one.
Twitter, Reddit.
The same we have now. I don't think social media platforms have changed very much in the last 5 years.
Yeah, I think it's good on Discord. Yeah, it really does. Like I'm looking at Piv's skull avatar on Discord. It really does look like he's saying it. Now with the cigarette, you kind of lose some of that because that's a little bit of distance between the punk and the thing. But the punk's just right there.
I mean, personally, I like the front, like straight on, symmetrical, front-facing ones. Kind of like I have. I mean, most of the people actually up on stage now have a front-facing PFP.
Well, I have a degenerate PFP. I have a pre-PFP PFP. It's not actually a PFP. It just looks like a cat sitting there. It should be more cropped, more aggressively cropped. But
if mine were facing up, if mine were upside down, it would be facing left.
Oh wait, I didn't see that. Yeah, okay, I see it now. It was just really small on my phone, and I'm driving.
Yeah, no worries.
So is Milady anime? Not to get too far into the Milady thing.
No. I mean, I think it's anime inspired. The eyes are obviously anime. It's more closely like I think it would be like chibi, inspired, which is like a type of anime. Yeah, but it's kind of like this neo. It's like this neo hyper pop, like internet
serial
kind of
lane experiments. It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the 90s one as well. There's a connection there to all of that, like Neuralink or connected network spirituality, they call it.
So there's some real artistic sophistication there, putting aside
Yeah,
all
the
the...
ladies are cool. Like, look, we got a couple here, and they look interesting to me. They've had a lot of controversy around them. They're like this love-hated thing, so which makes it even more interesting, right? There's always a story, and that's the kind of thing when you talk about cultural impact that, like, you can write. I'm pretty sure someone's going to write a thesis on sort of the culture of NFTs or PFPs or something like that. There may not be enough for a big one, like you might be able to. I don't know if you could get a master's thesis out of it. I don't know. Like you need some more content. Like you need things to write about, unless you take it on a that's only one facet of a broader study on something that's happened in the last I don't know, to do with culture, like one part of it in the last year or 2 years. But yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if you could write 50,000 words on the cultural impact of it'd be impressive if you could. But yeah, communities are forever topics of research, and some of those things like that have happened in this space like over the last year, you could get some pretty good content out. And there's a lot of theoretical points of view or ways of framing all of these things that you could look into. I mean, that's what the study of culture is for, and that's what these theories are for. And you can appropriate any theory you like. Like this morning, I came in and said, "Oh, Andrei Tarkovsky said his famous quote, sculpting in time," which he just talks about how he loves to capture images on film. I would like to think about that in terms of blockchain technology and capturing time. And then you can write I could probably write a couple of thousand words on that idea. I could probably do that. So there's potential for that. Yeah, I'm rambling now. Sorry.
That's all right. The way I look at the NFT community is like, it's like a digital nation, right? You got the people that we have our own language, we have our own little pockets and niches and stuff like that. But there's people that are constantly in the space and always building and always or being a part of it in some capacity. And then you have people that kind of drift in and out of the space, like tourists. People like who bought the Trump card with a credit card. That was probably a ton of people's first foray into the world of NFTs and Web3. However, light it might have been, but yeah, I mean, I just think it's like it's I don't know, it's like a new nation, basically, I guess. We govern ourselves and hold each other accountable as much as possible, but we try to.
Yeah, I love it. That's a positive way of looking at it. Sorry, Dove. We're going to end on a positive note here tonight, because it's really true. And here we are. And shouts to Ben Bit. I fixed that bug on the site. Nearly killed me, but it also taught me some important lessons. And shouts to positivity. And yeah, I mean, look, we're all here. We're in this chat. And I know none of you, or before I didn't. And now all I do is talk to. You're my only social. I'm completely isolated. I live in the country. I'm just totally isolated. So, now, that's also a negative way to look at it. Now, the positive way to look at it is it's the friends we made along the way, and we're keeping going, which is even better. Thank you, Critical Function, for joining us today. This has been the Capsule 21 podcast.
Thank you.
Merry
Merry Christmas, guys. It's Christmas. So, yeah, Merry Christmas.
Yeah. Happy holidays.
Yeah, happy holidays, I should say. Yeah.
Happy holidays, and I hope you got for Christmas a big gift of cash, because there will be a holidays thing from your friends at Capsule 21, and it's going to be expensive.
Dubious way to say that.
That's all.
Friends.
That's all I will say about that. So please make sure to put cash on your wish list, and make sure also to join us again next week for the Year in Review episode. On this episode, we will be answering some very important questions, and you are all welcome to come join us in that answering. These are questions that kind of just get at the big questions of what happened this year. And there are 4 questions I want you all to think about before next week. 1, we're going to talk about, and I want you to write down everything that you are good at and enjoy doing. I want you to write down everything you know you're not great at. 3, write down the hard learnings you've made this year. And 4, the biggest challenges you've had this year. So I want everyone to do this homework, write these things down. It's good for you too. It's also free content for us. And we are going to talk about this in the famous Year in Review podcast. This has been the Caps 21 podcast. Please join us again next week. If you're listening to this, you should listen to that episode too, when you learn some things that weren't exactly quite what you expected them to be about the hardest learnings and biggest challenges. I'm Middlemarch. My co-hosts are Dovetail and Piv, and this is Caps 21. If you're listening to this, you are next.